Hello, I'm Robert Simmons. I'm presenting again today a video about part of one of the chapters in my new book, The Alchemy of Stones. And this book has just been printed and it's just become available the 1st of September 2020. Of all the things I've written, this is the one that I'm the most excited about. And because of that, I'm making quite an extensive series of videos to talk about the ideas that are in the book. I'll show you the cover right now. This is a facsimile of the cover, just a printout of that. But you can see that's what it looks like. And if you're interested in ordering the book, you can go to heavenandearthjewelry.com online, or you can call up the 800 number, 800-942-9423 in the US. So today, the chapter I'm going to talk about and I'm going to read to you is chapter 2, which is Discovering the Alchemical Worldview. And this is one of the most important chapters in the book, in my view, because this is the chapter that introduces and explains why this book is called The Alchemy of Stones, and why I think that alchemy is the very best paradigm, or the very best way of approaching our work with stones to both get the most out of it for ourselves and also to give the most back from ourselves to the stone beings and the soul of the world. So, the alchemical worldview is one that is very different from the materialistic worldview that we were all brought up in. I'll go into that as I read the chapter to you, but basically we're talking about the difference between a world in which everything is spiritually alive and a world in which materialism even denies that consciousness is real. But let's go into the book and talk about it as we go along or at the end. All right? So I begin this chapter, Discovering the Alchemical Worldview, with a couple of quotes. And the first one is this, from Robin Robertson in his book, Indra's Net. In most histories of thought, alchemy has been presented as a primitive precursor to chemistry. This is a deep misapprehension, one resulting from our modern inability to understand a time when the surrounding world was still regarded as holy. It's critical to understand that this alchemical belief system could arise and continue only so long as nature is viewed as alive. It is the modern scientific view of nature as a thing that makes this earlier view seem strange to us. Native Americans still hold the view of the natural world not only as a living being, but as a sacred living being. And that really sums up the essence of the difference between the alchemical worldview and the worldview that is sort of the default setting, or you'd say the pervading mindset of the world at large these days. Another quote for you from Paul Levy. The ancient art of alchemy was chiefly concerned with changing something of seemingly little value into something precious, of transferring lead into gold, thereby creating the Philosopher's Stone. The stone was not a material substance, however, but is an awakened consciousness, which, though seemingly immaterial, pervades, informs, and gives rise to all creation. The Philosopher's Stone doesn't just redeem the individual alchemist. It non-locally influences the field to such a degree that it was considered to be able to redeem the entire cosmos. Alchemy is a timeless sacred art, as the alchemist's art is to become an instrument for the incarnating deity to make itself real in time and space. And, that language is very erudite. The thing I would take from it is that alchemy aims at the very highest possible goal, the transmutation of the world to realize itself in its full divine potential. And as that happens, it happens for us, the alchemists, as well. And as we get into this chapter, I think you'll see why it is our work with stones is spiritual alchemy. So I have another couple of quotes for you. This is one from Robert Bly that I like very much. He says, "We know that much pagan thought, as exemplified in the famous phrase, 'as above, so below,' suggests that the terms inferior and superior are unreal. The idea, 'as above, so below,' evokes an awe toward nature, a sense that we share consciousness with plants, animals, stars, and stones, and that all living creatures, including stones, share a consciousness with the soul of the world, or the spiritual genius of the earth." So that, again, puts it in a nutshell. We're saying that we ourselves, the stars, the stones, the plants, and the animals are all spiritually alive, and that all of us share our consciousness with the soul of the world. So we'll go on from there, but that's something to hold in mind as we go forward. The next quote, the last one before we start the chapter, is a one-liner from my good friend Daniel Deerdorf, and he says, "Alchemy is situated precisely at the crossroads of science and magic." So think about that as well as we go on. Now here I begin. All of the world's advanced societies in these difficult times have at their core an emptiness. Something is missing, and we can feel that absence in our hearts. We are all aware that the technological revolution brought about by the emergence of materialistic, mechanistic science has brought us many wonders, but they are all material wonders. They have all come via manipulation of physical matter and physical energy in the outer physical world. What is missing is the link with the inner world, the link with soul and spirit, the link with worth and meaning. We live in a planetary human culture primarily defined by the belief system of materialism. Under this worldview, the only things that are considered real are just things, material objects bumping into each other, making physical events happen in a one-way flow from the past to the present and on into a largely predetermined future. It's all about action and reaction, cause and effect. In this world, souls are unreal, spiritual experiences are hallucinations, and death extinguishes consciousness permanently. The existence of consciousness is one of materialism's biggest conundrums. The philosophers call it the hard problem. If physical matter constitutes the entire universe, and if all matter is inherently unconscious, how did our consciousness arise? Questions like these can leave a materialist nowhere to go, except to deny the existence of consciousness itself, which some of them do. This can be embarrassing since the experience of denying the reality of consciousness takes place in one's conscious mind. Most people don't really think about these things very much, but we should. The influence of materialism is pervasive, and it is what allows us to treat the earth and everything on it as mere objects we can do with as we will. If the world has neither consciousness nor soul, then it is simply a pile of resources to be plundered. Materialism denies that there is any value other than survival, tells us that matter is dead, that no other life forms, and certainly no inanimate objects, are self-aware, and that the universe itself has no purpose. This set of notions is at the core of scientism, the belief system of scientific materialism, a dogma as rigid and intolerant as any religion has ever been. It is the source of the emptiness we feel in our collective life. It underlies the corporate oligarchy, our oil wars, frantic consumerism, drug addiction, and a myriad of other symptoms of the sickness that comes from the denial of soul. Fortunately, this belief system is wrong. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time in this book refuting the materialistic worldview. Others have done it very well already. See Rupert Sheldrake's book, Science Set Free, and David R. Fiedler's Restoring the Soul of the World. What I hope to do is show that our experiences with stones and their energies demonstrate that consciousness is present everywhere, including the mineral world. This being so, a new worldview is needed, one that can accommodate the reality of consciousness existing not only in human beings, but in animals, plants, stars, and stones. In stones, and most importantly, in the earth. Have there ever been people who have created such a worldview and lived it? Robert Bly points out that these sorts of ideas were common in pagan thought. David Fiedler, in his aforementioned book, tells us that the idea of the world as a single, conscious, living organism was embraced by the pre-Socratic Greek philosophers. The animistic beliefs held by many Aboriginal peoples clearly involved an awareness of the consciousness of the living world. The later domination of humanity, especially in the West, first by religion and then by science, cut us off from those roots. Surprisingly, there is a tradition that kept alive the connection with the soul of the world, a tradition that focused human intentions on cooperating with the divine in nature for the purpose of bringing the world into a state of fulfillment and perfection. The practitioners of this tradition believed that the perfection of the world and the self, of matter and spirit, were inextricably linked. They felt that by working with imagination and with matter in a spiritual way, the union of heaven and earth could be achieved. They stood at the crossroads of science and magic, and their practice was known as alchemy. Early in my exposure to alchemical ideas, I learned that the goal of the great work of the alchemists was a stone, the Philosopher's Stone. As a stone enthusiast and author, discovering this heightened my excitement and affirmed my intuition that the spiritual and energy work with stones was somehow deeply related to the practice of spiritual alchemy. I began to suspect that the whole community of crystal lovers was engaged in alchemical endeavors without even knowing it. And I do think that is the case. And I think when we begin to do it consciously, there'll be a lot more that comes from it. Because when we do these things consciously, we focus our three human powers of attention, intention, and imagination on it. And that makes things move. But back to the book. The word alchemy comes from the Egyptian alchem, meaning the dark earth, the infusion, the elixir, or the Philosopher's Stone. A Wikipedia article on alchemy states, quote, "Alchemy is a philosophical and proto-scientific tradition practiced throughout Europe, Egypt, and Asia. It aimed to purify, mature, and perfect certain objects." In my understanding of the alchemical mindset, to purify means to refine something down to its very essence. To mature means to evolve something to its intended or destined potential. And to perfect means to bring something into an ideal state, displaying its divine nature. The article continues, quote, "Common aims were 1. The transmutation of base metals such as lead into noble ones, particularly gold. 2. The creation of an elixir of immortality. And 3. The creation of panaceas able to cure any disease. These aims, except for the transmutation of metals, resemble our aspirations with our stonework, healing, purification of oneself, and spiritual evolution into one's highest potential. In spiritual alchemy, the transformation of lead to gold is a symbol of the transformation of the self. The Wikipedia article goes on, quote, "The perfection of the human body and soul was thought to facilitate and or result from the alchemical magnum opus, or great work. This is very much akin to our aspiration that we share for enlightenment or unity with the divine. We work spiritually with stones to take us closer to that goal, or perhaps all the way there." Wikipedia goes on, "In the Greek and Western traditions, the achievement of Gnosis, direct knowledge of the divine, was the ultimate goal of alchemy. In Europe, the creation of a philosopher's stone was variously connected with all these projects." Now, the term Gnosis lies deep within the core of our work with spiritual alchemy and with stones. Gnosis means knowing. That's Gnosis. Gnosis means knowing, as distinct from believing or disbelieving. When Gnosis comes to us, whatever we might or might not have believed becomes irrelevant. The stories I told in the first chapter concern two of my own key experiences of Gnosis. Such experiences kindle an inner certainty about the spiritual realities that exist around and within us, and the processes of inner alchemy can lead us into more of them. When we work with stones and their energies, what we feel is not a belief, but an experience of matter and spirit conjoined. The fact that the ultimate goal of alchemy is the creation or manifestation of a stone is another key to alchemy's link with our crystal and stone work. The Philosopher's Stone can be viewed on multiple levels, from acting as a metaphor for one's self-realization or wholeness, to literally being embodied by a physical stone to which one relates in order to achieve the transmutation and redemption of oneself and the world. The Philosopher's Stone is both an inner and outer entity. Through our spiritual work, we can become as pure, solid, and true as a stone. Our way of being can become so harmonized with our true nature that once we achieve the union of our conscious individuality with our deep self and the soul of the world, nothing external can ever dislodge that union. We become as strong as stones. And this power, according to the alchemists, gives us the capacity to co-creatively bring perfection and self-realization to the world. In the words of Paul Levy, the achievement of the Philosopher's Stone, quote, influences the field to such a degree that it was considered able to redeem the entire cosmos. So this is big stuff. And our work with stones is big stuff. And part of what I'm doing in this chapter is trying to show you that and kindle your imagination. The alchemists perceive that we can become partners with the divine. Indeed, our participation is essential. Without us, the divine cannot fully incarnate, and the potential for worldwide awakening will never be realized. This is important too, because it means that what we do is essential. Worldwide awakening isn't just going to happen. We help bring it into being. Now I'll go on. Why is this? It is something of a mystery, but I believe I know one reason. From my experience and that of myriad others who have felt its presence, the essential nature of the divine is love. If we think about love, we know that it will never impose itself, because in doing so, it would cease to be love. Love offers itself, but never compels us. Our free will, which can accept or refuse love's offer, is in itself clear evidence of the loving nature of reality. In human terms, if we love someone, their happiness and fulfillment becomes our own goal, and this must always include the loved one's freedom. It also means that the divine must wait for us to turn in its direction and accept its offer of co-creative partnership. When we do this, we begin to participate in the marriage of heaven and earth. So where do the stones come into this picture? Most of the people reading this book or listening to me talk right now are likely to have felt crystal energy. The gentle buzzing of a stone in your hand, the warmth that can enter your body, the tingling, pulsing vibrations in the chakras that certain stones can engender, all of these are experiences of consciousness meeting consciousness. Think of the stone currents as vibrations, like notes of music or the words of a song. When we feel, what we feel is the effect in ourselves of encountering a mineral being that is singing its song right into us. The songs of various stones can produce all sorts of physical, emotional, and mental states, just as different music affects us differently. And like good music, the vibrations of the stones can captivate us with inner experiences of beauty. Beauty that can help us, heal us, and awaken us. Beauty that can inspire us to make ourselves and the world more beautiful. And like an unforgettable song, the stone's energies can resonate within us until they become part of us. And we become a locus where their music lives within the world. Once I began thinking of stones as beings with their own sort of consciousness, I tried to imagine what types of beings they might be. One idea I like is to view the stone beings as angels of the earth. From ancient times, angels have been viewed as messengers of the divine. They are faithful servants who bring messages from divine beings to human beings. By their nature, they are trustworthy and true. They are emanations of divine will. I view the stone beings in the same way. In my 35 plus years of working with them, they have always been reliably available, never vacillating and never ceasing, always radiating their characteristic energies. Spiritually, the stone beings are their vibrational songs. This is potentially a great help to us, because human beings are usually much less consistent than the stone beings. We vacillate a lot, and the primary work of much meditation is to sit there long enough for our thoughts to finally settle down. When we meditate with stones, we can relax into their vibrations, their songs, and allow ourselves to resonate with them. This quiets our thoughts much more quickly and facilitates our entry into a great variety of inner domains of experience. And remember, if the stone beings are angelic messengers serving the soul of the world, then all of their currents come directly to us from the divine nature of the earth. They not only quiet our thoughts, they also bring us into harmony with her. Imagining this, one can easily see how profoundly transformative working with stones can be, and that it is indeed alchemy. I want to mention a detail about stones here. My experience is that every stone sings two songs at once. The first is the song of its species or type of stone. All amethyst, for example, sings the amethyst song. The second song is that of each individual piece or crystal. There's something about various pieces of the same type of stone that attract or engage us in their own special way. And different people resonate more or less powerfully with different pieces of the same type of stone. Many of you will already have experienced this when a single crystal or stone calls to you from a shelf or a showcase, while others of the same type don't. I'm tempted to imagine that every stone has a kind of individuality, just as we do, and that it is expressed in a way that is comparable to ours. Just as we humans all sing the human song, at the same time, we also sing the song of our individuality. Something similar seems to occur with the stones. The vibes or energies we sense from the stones are what I'm calling their songs, and our felt sense of their appeal, of our resonance with one stone or another, is how we distinguish which ones are best for us. So, as with other creatures, all stones of a species are similar, yet each one is different from every other. If we allow the stones to teach us their harmony, our own vibrations can become stronger, truer, and purer until we transform into beings capable of choosing to unify ourselves with the spiritual earth. In so doing, we each become a stone ourselves, the alchemical philosopher's stone. The ancient Greek name for the soul of the world is Sophia, which also means wisdom. The essence of the soul of the world is indeed wisdom, or the underlying harmony that pervades our world would not exist. The early Greek thinkers understood this, and so used the word Sophia to refer to wisdom as a being, the sole essence of our world. The alchemists viewed themselves as philosophers in the original sense. The word philosopher is derived from two ancient Greek words, philein, meaning to love, and sophos, meaning wisdom, or the soul of the world. So a philosopher was a lover of wisdom, or Sophia, a lover of the soul of the world. Throughout the alchemical literature, there are references made to the belief that without the co-creative participation and guidance of Sophia, the great work of alchemy could never succeed. Those of us who look to the stone beings as partners in our spiritual evolution can see this clearly. Without the stones and their songs, their messages from Sophia, we could find ourselves at a loss for how to embody the many healing and consciousness awakening vibrations that are needed to initiate us on our journeys. Without their guiding currents, how would we know which way to orient ourselves toward the future that calls to us? Certainly there are other paths than the path of stones, but I know of no other road upon which so many kinds of assistance are so readily available. How are we to respond to such gentle yet stupendous gifts of grace? I think our best answer is to accept the earth's invitation, the invitation of the stone beings, and to offer our love in return. The Persian poet Rumi put it this way: "Let the beauty we love be what we do. There are hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the earth." If we are to escape the emptiness of materialism, we can't do it by ascending. We can't fly away to heaven, leaving the earth to her fate. One of the things I love about the alchemists is the fact that they didn't try to do this. They didn't encourage journeys up to Buddhist nirvanas, nor even to the Christian heaven. They wanted heaven and earth to get married, to conjoin, and they set about to help that happen, right here in the physical world. The fact that stones, the very essence of solid matter, have perceptible spiritual energies is an example of the unity of heaven and earth that you can hold right in your hand. And our perception is, in fact, the key to the manifestation of that reality. As Paul Levy stated, the alchemical work could be said to focus on, quote, changing something of seemingly little value into something precious, unquote. This transformation was necessarily done on the physical and spiritual levels simultaneously because, quote, precious went far beyond monetary worth. And the change involved was not simply an outer or even only an inner transmutation. The alchemist's perceptual imagination had to evolve in order to both perceive and create the rebirth of mere matter into the miraculous philosopher's stone. As we go on, we will see that this is exactly what we do when we involve ourselves emotionally and spiritually with the various stones we meet in the outer world of nature or in a crystal store. Whether we know it or not, by recognizing and feeling the spiritual qualities and energies of stones, we are shifting our own perceptual imaginations to a state from which we are capable of transmuting lifeless rock with no consciousness into living, vibrating, awakened, ensouled matter with which we can relate. in an endless cycle of mutual enrichment. This transmutation is not just our imagination, nor is it something we can bring about all by ourselves. The stone beings and the soul of the world must participate. However, we also must reach out with our imagination, our attention, and our intention in order to discover and co-create what awaits us. We find a clue about this kind of transformation in the Gnostic Gospel of Thomas, wherein Jesus is quoted as saying, quote, "Let he who seeks cease not to seek until he finds, and when he finds, he will be astonished, and when he is astonished, he will wonder, and will reign over the universe." When we look to see consciousness and spiritual presence within the stones, to our astonishment, we find it. And in our astonishment, wonders open to us. We discover our innate co-creative power, and in union with the soul of the world, we can bring about the redemption of matter, the awakening of the universe. This was the goal of the alchemists, and it is our highest potential. It all begins with the first stone we choose, or perhaps the one that chooses us. This corresponds to the first phase of the alchemical work. In alchemy, the first substance to be worked with was called the prima materia, which means the first matter. It was viewed as being initially in a state of chaos and unconsciousness, so much so that its true value was invisible to most people. Does that sound familiar? How many people do you know who view your crystals as, quote, just rocks, and your interest in them as mere fantasy? Through relationship with the alchemist, in which he or she devotes much time, attention, and effort to the transformation of the substance gradually becomes more and more enlivened and awakened, more and more precious. And wonder of wonders, the same thing happens within the alchemist as well. The prima materia is simultaneously the outer substance being worked with and the consciousness of the alchemist. Through working with them both at once, both are transmuted and awakened. All of this has occurred in my own involvement with the mineral kingdom, and it is available to anyone who will accept the earth's offer and engage wholeheartedly in the great work of the Alchemy of Stones. So in the past few paragraphs, I've been inviting you into the alchemical worldview. To most of us, it's unfamiliar territory, even though we may recall experiences that resonate with some aspects of it. It's easy to understand that our perceptions of stone energies and the spiritual qualities of the stones do not fit within materialism. I don't think that any machine will ever be able to measure crystal energies, since I don't believe that their currents are merely physical. But because we ourselves partake of both matter and spirit, we are the entities capable of perceiving them. In any case, we need a worldview wide enough to accommodate our bodies, our souls, and our spirits, and the bodies, souls, and spirits of all the beings, including the stone beings, with whom we share the world. Spiritual alchemy offers such a perspective. Spiritual alchemy includes many powerful ideas, but for the purposes of this book, I want to explore 6 major ones that I've incorporated into my own practice. I believe these can open our minds to a more adequate picture of the world and our own potential as practitioners of the alchemy of stones. These 6 aspects of the alchemical worldview are panpsychism, true imagination and the imaginal realm, Sophia and co-creation, transformation through feedback, the transcendent function, creating the philosopher's stone, or union with the divine. Some of these terms are phrased in modern language rather than in the historical language of alchemy, because I'm attempting to lay out the new worldview we need for the alchemy of stones. We'll explore them in the chapters to come. So you don't have to remember those 6 aspects, because the next 6 chapters will be about each of them. Now, I want to end this chapter with a quote from Anne Baring in her work called The Great Work of Alchemy. This is what she says. Alchemy flows beneath the surface of Western civilization like a river of gold, preserving its images and its insights for us so that we could one day understand our presence on this planet better than we do. Alchemy builds a bridge between the human and the divine, the seen and the unseen dimensions of reality, between matter and spirit. The cosmos calls to us to become aware that we participate in its life, that everything is sacred and connected, one life, one spirit. Alchemy responds to that call. It asks us to develop cosmic consciousness, to awaken the divine spark of our consciousness and reunite it with the invisible soul of the cosmos. It changes our perception of reality and answers the questions, who are we and why are we here? It refines and transmutes the base metal of our understanding so that we, evolved from the very substance of the stars, can know that we participate in the mysterious ground of spirit while living in this physical dimension of reality. So I think Anne Baring's words are quite beautiful and again sum up very well the intention of the work of spiritual alchemy and the worldview of spiritual alchemy. To say it again in simpler terms, I would say that the most important thing we can know is that spirit and matter are conjoined. As Jung said, they're 2 aspects of the same thing. Materialism is far too inadequate, too one-sided of a view to encompass reality. Spirituality alone leaves out the physical world. So we need to develop a view of the world in which both things are at play and a part of our way of seeing things all the time, in every moment. The stones help us do that because they are solid matter with spiritual energy, which many of us can feel. And when we begin to treat the stone beings as beings and relate with them with intentionality and focus our awareness on them and invite them into our hearts, all of those things increase the intensity of our sensitivity to what the stones are singing into us and what the soul of the world is singing into us. And I would say that what she sings into us is the song of our destiny. So, having said all this, maybe you understand why I felt that it was important to write a book in which the worldview of alchemy and our work with stones were brought together and shown to be one thing. I hope this chapter has done its work and helped you look at it that way. I will continue to make more videos that bring out further aspects of what's in the book. I won't read all the chapters aloud, but the ones that are concise enough and have enough material that I can't really say better speaking off the cuff, those things I will read. So I hope you enjoy this one. I hope you get excited enough to start practicing the alchemy of stones in your life, whether you get my book or not. Of course, I think it's a very good idea to get my book, and if what I've said to you today attracts you and resonates in you, then I do think you'll find more in the book that you'll like. So I guess I'll just say to you all, thank you for watching this. Many blessings, and may the union of spirit and matter be consummated, and may the aspiration of Sophia, the soul of the world, be realized. Many blessings. Thank you so much.